Welcome to the channel, guys. We are back again, and today I'm going to be doing a fragrance comparison between Nishane Sultan Vetiver and Lalique Encre Noire, so stay tuned for that. If you like cologne comparisons, top 10 lists, fragrance reviews, and first impressions, hit that subscribe button for more great content. So this is a comparison that I thought about doing for a while, and I think this is a good comparison because Lalique, they're definitely a brand that you can get on discounters. You can get very, very good prices on their fragrances, sometimes between $20 and $30. A lot of people do talk about Encre Noire as a really nice vetiver fragrance. And on the other hand, we have Nishane, which is like a high-end niche brand. Not the most expensive niche brand by any standards, but they do have a reputation for being a quality niche fragrance. And of course, this is a vetiver dominant fragrance from the brand. So I thought it would be nice to talk about the difference between a very inexpensive vetiver fragrance and a really high-end vetiver fragrance, and talk about some of the differences, price value comparison, all of those things. And I think it's also a good time to do it because spring to me is one of the best times to really wear vetiver, especially on overcast days. It can be very, very nice in my opinion. Now, right into the fragrance, I'm going to talk a little bit about Encre Noire first. I'm going to talk both about the Sport, which is my personal favorite, as well as À l'Extrême. And then I'm going to point out some ways in which they're different, and then also compare, performance, projection, all of that stuff. So the one thing I actually get with the Lalique is that there's a surprising amount of citrus in the opening. So it is actually quite bright, quite uplifting, and quite fresh. And that's one of the interesting things about this is, especially if you see the description for Sultan Vetiver, they really do sell the opening or market it as a very bright, lively citrus opening. And there is certainly a citrus element to it, but when it comes to having that very bright, fresh opening, Encre Noire Sport actually has a much brighter and better opening from that viewpoint. Of course, the À l'Extrême doesn't have that quite bright opening. So really there is a very definitive difference if, depending on what you're looking for. I do find this one has a bit of an aquatic note, which is not super prominent in the opening, but this does have, a little bit of that darkness, a little bit of that inkiness, but it's not nearly as earthy as À l'Extrême, which I actually find does have a very strong soil vibe to it, which is really nice, but you have to kind of really like and want to, or be in the mood to smell a little bit more like dirt. Not dirty, but dirt. So it does have this sort of brooding, dark aspect to it, which I do really like. Also love the juice color. It's like a really dark, like turquoise or something like that. And this one does also have, of course, very prominent vetiver, very prominent cypress. Those are two of the main players in this fragrance, and I'm actually very, very surprised how long that citrus lasts. I mean, honestly, even a couple hours in this fragrance, I can still get a pretty good strong whiff of the citrus, which was definitely a very big surprise. Now, for Sultan Vetiver, it does definitely have a little bit of citrus in the opening, but it's not particularly bright. I actually find that the vetiver, especially in the opening, is a little bit smoky. One of the other things I actually really like about this fragrance that, this does have a little bit of is it has what I call that sort of marshy vetiver quality. So, if you think about taking a stroll through a marsh, it's outdoors, it's earthy, there's maybe a bog or whatever, but it is also wet. So it does definitely have this very woody, wet feeling to it, which to me, like, it borders on having this sort of aquatic nature. I find a lot of vetivers have this, and I also do get this marshy quality from this one. And I thought originally that it was because of that aquatic note, but it's not, because other vetiver fragrances like this one do have that, and I really, really enjoy that aspect. And this one definitely has, to me, more of that wet sort of woodiness, and it lasts a lot longer. Now, there is a point in the mid where I actually think that these fragrances do smell very similar, and that's when you get more of this dry, woody vetiver vibe. Now, Sultan Vetiver has like 4 different kinds of vetiver in it, if I recall. So it definitely goes through a lot of different phases, and I think different vetiver notes definitely become more prominent at different times. And in the mid is when these two actually line up a lot, I feel. Because you get, again, that very nice dry vetiver vibe. And as for the Ala Extreme, you know, I don't find that it has that as much. It still has this very dark, earthy vibe all the way through. It is a little bit linear as compared to even Encre Noire Sport, or definitely this one, which is a lot more robust. Still very, very good, especially for the price point. Now, as both of these start to dry down, they do again change. This one, I find it gets a little bit soapier. And so this is one thing that this fragrance differs a lot from this one. The one kind of vetiver I don't get in Sultan Vetiver at all is a soapy vetiver. So you got fragrances like this, or Mugler Cologne, original vetiver, you know, that have these very soapy kinds of vibes. This one does not do that at all. Now, what it does have, however, is a very clean smell. And I think part of that is due to that sort of wet, woody vibe that it has. The wetness doesn't come off in any way as dirty. It actually comes off as a very clean, watery vibe. And so I really do like that. And, you know, moving back into the Drydown, to me it gets a little smokier again. It's not extraordinarily smoky, but it does have that somewhat darker vibe without being as dark as, say, even this, but definitely not as dark as Ala Extreme. And, you know, I think this is, honestly, this is a really, really great vetiver fragrance, but again, Encre Noire Sport also is. Now, so they are actually noticeably different at many different stages, although there are times, like I said, there are undertones of Encre Noire in this fragrance. At times, I feel like, oh, that is similar to Encre Noire. That's originally why I decided to do this comparison. There are certainly some similarities there. Now, when it comes to actual performance, both of them do perform very well. I actually do get pretty good performance, although this one, Encre Noire, a little bit less. And actually, surprisingly, I find the Sport performs better for me than Ala Extreme. Ala Extreme, I find, is something that's pretty close to the skin. It's not super prominent and isn't even that long lasting, which is really not what I would expect for a heavier vetiver fragrance. This one, it falls in that 6 to 8 hour mark, which is pretty good, especially for a slightly fresher fragrance without being super fresh. But it does have decent projection as well. So, you know, it does have about 2 hours projection, starts to sit a little closer to the skin. Sultan Vetiver has much better longevity. So really with this one, it is pushing more towards that 9 hour mark. Still not absolutely crazy longevity, but the longevity is longer. And the projection also is a little bit better in my opinion. So this one is one that is going to project stronger. Even say if you both went on both of these 5 sprays, this one's going to project stronger and it's going to last longer. The projection is also going to last longer. So it does, in the performance category, definitely beat it as well. Not that this one is particularly a slouch. It's not bad, especially for the price point. Now, scenarios, I think a lot of cases they could be worn in some of the same scenarios. Where I do find this one, you know, this one could borderline be worn in warmer weather. I have worn this. It is kind of a sport fragrance, but it's at the same time not really. But it does have this soapy vibe, which lends itself a little bit better, especially in the dry down, to the hotter temperature. So I think that you could pull this one off in a lot warmer temperature than this one. I still think, you know, if you have an overcast day, these ones are both very nice. If you have a nice spring day, these ones are very nice. Especially, I think, like, if you're going through a hike through the forest or something, these are really nice fragrances that really fit the environment a lot. They have that kind of outdoorsy kind of vibe, which is really, really nice. And I think, you know, I mean, they do have similar things. Now, I will say this one does have a touch of luxury that this one doesn't. So if you were going to wear vetiver to a formal event, which I think another thing, you know, it is a gentleman's note, in my opinion. Historically, that's kind of the way that it's thought of. And it is one that's definitely considered a more masculine kind of a note. And if you're going to wear one to a formal occasion, this is definitely it. Now, you could possibly pull this one off too. I'm not saying you actually couldn't, but this one would be much better for it. Whereas I feel like in a lot of other occasions, each of these don't really suit it better, except, like I said, this one for a little bit more of the warmth. So they both have some strengths where they're versatile, but ultimately they are very similar situations. Now, price point comparison. Now, ultimately, when it comes down to price value comparison, this one is, $25 on discounters, and this one you can get it cheaper. I got this one from a very reliable gray market seller for $115, but even still, that puts this one at less than a quarter of the price. So price value, this one is a much better price value proposition. And I would actually say, even if I'm going to sit here and say that this one is better, which to me it is the better fragrance in every respect, except for this one definitely wins on price. Even if I'm going to say that, I think this is still worthwhile having because it is definitely different from this in many different ways. But I think, this is one that I'll continue to recommend to people especially people who want to get into or try out vetiver dominant fragrances. There are fragrances that certainly have vetiver in them, like Elysium, that are really easy to wear and really easy to like, but that doesn't really compare to a fragrance that is dominated by vetiver. That's in my opinion, totally different beast. And the price value you get for this one, it's a really easy way to step into vetiver and get a very good feel on what a vetiver dominant fragrance is really all about, because this does capture a lot of the good qualities that they have. The quality is very high for the price, and I do think it's a great fragrance. That being said, as I mentioned, yes, this one is definitely the better. To me, it is the undisputed king of vetiver fragrances. It's just so well done, and it has so much going on, so much complexity, and so much to enjoy about it every time you wear it. And it is a very quality, luxurious, and gentlemanly fragrance. So, that's my take on the matter. Let me know in a comment down below, out of these two, or any of the Encre Noirs, of course, and Sultan Vetiver, which one do you like better and why? And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.